Okay, thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Fun for Women and Girls very first virtual cocktails and conversation. My name is Kathy Shader-Batterman. On behalf of my co-chair, Karen Collius, and the entire leadership team of the Fun for Women and Girls, we are delighted you could join us this evening. Most of you are very well acquainted with the Fun for Women and Girls, our mission, and the work that we do. But for those of you who aren't, we are a grant-making fund within the Princeton Area Community Foundation. Our mission is to improve the lives of economically vulnerable women and children in Greater Mercer County through investment, education, and collaboration. Working together and pooling the individual financial contributions of our voting members and our donors, we award grants totaling roughly $200,000 a year to local nonprofits that aid women and children. It goes without saying that we are in the midst of an extraordinary health and economic challenges presented by COVID-19. Tonight, we'll hear from 4 community organizations, including 2 Fun for Women and Girls grantee partners, Princeton Nursery School and Better Beginnings, about the issues they're facing in the wake of this pandemic. Collaborative educational programs like this one help us more fully understand the realities on the ground, thus making us better informed grant makers when voting members decide where to invest our funds every year. This year, we've already contributed $60,000 to the Community Foundation's COVID-19 Relief and Recovery Fund. And later this summer, we'll embark on a streamlined grant-making process in collaboration with other Community Foundation funders. You'll hear a bit more about this at the end of the program from Karen. So before I introduce our moderator, I just wanted to cover a few logistical items, some of which are popping up in your chat box, but tonight's program is being recorded and we will share the link with you following the event. Secondly, please keep your chat window open during the program as we'll be posting additional information and links. And to open that, just simply click on the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A function also on the bottom of your screen, just towards the right. Just simply click on it to open the Q&A window and type your question at any time during the program. So tonight we're focusing on a crucial issue for our community and our nation, the impact of COVID-19 on working parents and childcare. To lead our discussion, it is my pleasure to welcome Cecilia Zalkind, President and CEO of Advocates for Children of New Jersey. For over 25 years, CL has been a leader in public policy advocacy for children. She holds a BA and MA from NYU and a law degree from Rutgers University Law School. Her work at ACNJ has helped produce key policy advances in child welfare, early childhood education, and children's healthcare in New Jersey. We are grateful and honored to have CL leading tonight's conversation. And with that, I'll turn it over to her to introduce our panelists. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. And thank you all for joining us tonight for what I know will be a very informative and stimulating conversation about childcare in the pandemic. And a special thanks to the Fund for Women and Girls for hosting this event and highlighting the critical importance of childcare during the pandemic and as we look to reopening the state. And also a thank you to the amazing panelists you'll hear from in a few minutes. It's probably an understatement to say that the pandemic has impacted every aspect of our lives with immediate and long-term implications, especially for critical services for children and families. To me, the most dramatic impact has been on the child care system. But even before talking about the impact of the pandemic on childcare, I think we have to acknowledge that childcare was struggling in February pre-pandemic. Childcare is a unique business. It has specific standards it has to meet. Any increased costs, for example, the increase in the minimum wage, can't be met by reducing staff or increasing fees to parents. This is a system, these are programs that operate on very thin margins with very little reserves to sustain them over time in the event of an emergency. And who would have predicted an emergency like this? The impact of the pandemic on childcare, I think, was severe. Initially, there was a lot of confusion. The governor closed schools, left childcare open, a lot of conversation about whether childcare should close and what would happen if the state closed childcare, especially for those essential workers who needed to be able to work. But even without an order to close, I think childcare programs immediately felt the impact as parents became unemployed, were not sending children to care, or were afraid to send children because of uncertainty about health issues. And most programs lack the resources to sustain themselves more than a few weeks. And that's actually a national issue, not only in New Jersey. There was some help later on through federal funding and state funding, but as you'll hear, not enough to address the challenges of the pandemic. And then new standards came in, first for emergency care, and now as childcare is reopening. And I think also, you'll hear from our panelists, that childcare was challenged to play a new role for children, families, and the communities, taking on supports that they had not done before. But to me, the pandemic has also elevated the critical importance of childcare in a way that we have not seen before. That childcare is important not only to children and families, but to the community and to the economy. We are not going to be able to reopen, to restart our economy without childcare. More importantly, it has certainly elevated public perception of the critical importance of childcare, far greater with national recognition that childcare is essential. I don't know, very interesting to see front page of the New York Times on Saturday, above the fold, an article about how we are not going to be able to reopen as a state, as a nation, without childcare. So this is a critical issue. And again, thanks to the Fund for Women and Girls for hosting these conversations tonight. ACNJ is a statewide child advocacy organization. We've done a lot of advocacy over the last 4 months to hear about the impact of the pandemic and to advocate for policies to support childcare. I have talked to hundreds of childcare providers. I've learned a lot, and I am awed by their ability to handle this crisis. Their resourcefulness, their resilience is profound. And I think that you will be impressed in hearing some of their stories tonight. So what we're going to talk about is first, the impact of the pandemic on their programs. Second, the challenges of reopening. The governor issues an executive order reopening childcare as of June 15th. What were those challenges, especially in light of new standards, potential staffing issues, staffing and cleaning challenges, and then talk a bit about what has been the impact on children, especially in the area of learning loss for young children. A lot of attention to the public schools, to the K-12 population, but what about young children and the learning they experience in childcare? And then also the challenges ahead as the state moves to continue to reopen. So let me begin by introducing our panel. First, we have Luz Horta, who's the Executive Director of Better Beginnings Child Development Center. Luz has over 40 years of dedicated service in the field of early learning and early childcare, and Better Beginnings has earned a 4-star rating by GrowNJ Kids, which is New Jersey's childcare rating system, and this is the first in the county of Mercer. Our second speaker is Nancy Thompson, who's the Executive Director of the Childcare Connection, which is a childcare resource and referral agency in Mercer County. In this role, Nancy oversees all programs and services of the Childcare Connection, which include training, childcare referrals, family childcare registration, resource development, childcare subsidy, reimbursement, childcare networks, and advocacy. And Nancy has been at the Childcare Connection for over 30 years. And Rose Wong is the Executive Director of the Princeton Nursery School. Rose has nearly 30 years experience in education and nonprofit management. Princeton Nursery School is a 12-month preschool program in downtown Princeton that is providing quality preschool programming for the children of Mercer County for the past 91 years. So welcome to everybody. And why don't I start with the first question is to describe your program, introduce yourself again, describe your program, and what happened when the pandemic hit. Did you remain open? Did you close? What was that initial experience? And I'm going to ask Luz to get us started.
Initially, I think we closed when we were asked to close. All knew we were all very concerned and worried about how we were going to address the needs. It was a scary time, still is. Um, Teachers were concerned about their jobs, about their health, about their families. And then we went into, at least, we went into this mold of what can we do to make sure that there was the least impact on our families and our children, especially with just day-to-day things like food, healthcare. We serve families with low income, working parents. So there was just a multiple of issues that seemed to be needing answers in one day.
So I know both of your programs serve both fee-paying families as well as childcare subsidy. Pre-pandemic, Luz, how many children were in your program?
We had 94, and now we are up to 34. It's been a gradual return. I think one of the factors is the fear, the large fear from parents returning, and I'm sure also jobs. We don't have everything, all the facts for why some parents are not returning, but I'm sure it has to do with employment. Again, it's not also easy to communicate with some of our parents. They may not have the sources for us to reach out to them. But so far, 34.
Okay,
Full staff, by the
we'll
way.
get more of the details in a few minutes, but I want to turn to Rose and ask you about your program, how many children you were serving and what happened immediately after programs closed.
Thank you, Cecilia. Yes, in March we had 38 students at our school. We closed mid-March along with the school district in Princeton. And immediately, like Luz said, our concern was we're not just a preschool for our families, we're a lifeline with many other resources that we provide, especially food. 90% of the children that attend the Princeton Nursery School are living below the federal poverty line, and they really rely on the 3 meals that are made at the school from scratch each day. And all of a sudden, they have no care, no food, and no other support services that we provide. So we immediately tried to put into action a variety of services that we could for our families. For the first month of closure, we were doing weekly food distribution to our families, thanks to the generosity of so many in the community, both restaurants and corporations and private individuals. And we're able to do this drive-through food distribution to our families. Throughout the whole closure, thanks again to the unbelievable generosity of the community, we have been able to provide grocery gift cards every week to our families in need so that they could get the groceries for the food that we would have normally been providing. We also additionally did weekly, multiple times throughout the week, Zoom lessons with our children where possible. We've been sending home packages to the families with different activities and art activities and supplies and that for the children to have. And in addition, our social worker has been, and our program administrator has been communicating on a weekly basis to all our families to make sure that they're okay. We checked in with them about their financial and employment situation, as well as how the children are progressing, stress the parents are under, and making sure that they had that support there. We were also, thanks again to generosity of some individuals, we were able to help a few families who were in some very bad predicaments, including being evicted, unable to pay utility bills. And so we had a variety of donors come forward for our Compassion in Crisis appeal so that those families were able to, protect their family during this time when we at one stage worked out that over 95% of our families had lost their jobs. And so as we reopen, we will be reopening August 1st. And one of the things that we're doing is making sure that we are able to support our families as they try to get their work, and they're, not able to get that work unless they have childcare. So it's kind of like, we know for those first few months of reopening that we're going to need to provide more scholarship than we've ever provided to our families to make sure that they can then go back and earn their income so that they can support their families. So we're looking forward to welcoming the children back.
I think you both raised a really good point about the isolation of families during the pandemic, especially families who are vulnerable, lost jobs, income loss, and the role that you played in stepping up and making sure that those families were engaged, that somebody was checking in on them. And I think as we learn more about what's happened to families during the pandemic, those connections have been critically important. From the concrete things like providing food to the checking in, seeing how you're doing. Nancy, the Childcare Connection is a slightly different program. It's a childcare resource and referral agency. You were regarded as an essential service and remained open.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. So we process the subsidy payments for all of the families in Mercer County. And during the state of emergency, when the emergency childcare centers opened, we then had to process applications from all of the essential workers. So we actually had about 700 essential worker applications that came forward. However, many of them were duplicative and some of them weren't eligible. They had to meet the criteria for the executive order, but over 400 families did benefit from the essential worker childcare subsidy that the state put into place. And so we processed all of those applications, and we are still processing all the applications from all of the other families that were on the subsidy program as well, because those families were up for redetermination of eligibility and things like that. So it was a very, very, very busy time for us, probably the busiest we've ever been.
How many programs stepped up to provide emergency care?
There were 30 in Mercer. So 30 programs signed up to be essential to stay open. And most of those programs were programs that typically take private pay, like the majority of the families are private pay. That's not the case for all of them, but I'd say well over 50% are not receiving most of their income through subsidy. Most of them were receiving their income through a private pay situation.
Okay. So I know you've talked about how your programs changed in terms of meeting the needs of the children and families you serve, but what about the impact on your programs themselves, the financial impact? What was that? Rose, I'm going to start with you.
Wow. Well, so I think the impact of that's still unknown, and that's the hardest part. I think almost 3-4 times a week I say to somebody, I wish I had a crystal ball. The immediate impact, of course, was that, what to do regarding our staff. And, our teachers are amazing, they're dedicated, and they're unbelievably talented. But there was just no way after the first couple of weeks when this became clear it was going to be an extended closure that the Princeton Nursery School could maintain paying all our staff. And we made the extremely difficult decision to lay them off temporarily. And we're looking forward to seeing them all back in 2 weeks for sure. But financially, the impact was we still had bills to pay. We still had things to do during this closure, yet we had very limited revenue obviously coming in. Thankfully, the subsidy program that Nancy coordinates continued to pay for those families that are on subsidy. So we were receiving those subsidy payments, which was the way we were able to continue to support our families and to support the school. In addition, we were very lucky to receive one of the grants from the Princeton Area Community Foundation's COVID relief, and that definitely helped us in those first, 2 months of closure. I can't believe it's been more than 2 months of being closed. And you know, so now it's the unknown of reopening. Extremely expensive to reopen, one, for all the cleaning supplies and the PPE supplies that we need to provide, just the sheer amount we need, but also they're so difficult to get and you're paying a fortune for them. You know, we're not big school districts. We have to buy, you know, individually, and so we don't get, you know, bulk discounts. And then also just the big impact that we are waiting, you know, we've got all our different scenarios, but the big impact is that we are reopening with a limited capacity, yet our staffing levels need to remain the same. So it is, you know, a small nonprofit like us, we're on a very tight budget at the best of times.
Right.
Now it's not going to be easy at all. And that's something that my board and I are every day trying to work out how we're going to do this and how we're going to continue to support our families to remain open and to provide this care for the families and all the support along with it. So it's unknown yet, but cross fingers and prepare for everything, and then we should be okay.
Luz, was your experience similar?
Yes, we'll have to ditto everything that Rose pretty much said. We are perhaps a little bit more fortunate that more than half of our children receive subsidy. And so it's really unknown what's going to happen. Again, the good fortune that we have been paid through the subsidy through July, but don't really know what's going to happen in August. And also, not all of our children have returned. So it's really a big unknown. It's almost like a puzzle. We have little pieces here, and there are pieces that will be missing. There are pieces, for instance, we had to cancel or postpone, and I think it will be canceled, our big fundraiser that we depended to end our fiscal year. We were, again, fortunate that we did not have to lay off any of our staff and were able to pay them and took advantage of the PPP loan that was out there, which allow us to continue to pay the parents. So thankful for those resources. Again, like Rose, thankful to the Women's and Girls Fund for the support received and the grants received. But it is an unknown, and it is scary to see how we are going to be able to sustain our programs and also sustain it in a quality way. Our accreditations, which also help our centers fund-wise, are dependent on providing a quality program. So we need to be able to do that, or that also can be a financial disadvantage for our centers.
So Nancy, I know you interact with all the childcare programs in Mercer. Is this the experience you saw across the county?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All of the programs went into what am I going to do mode? How am I going to make this work? I think all of the childcare center directors are all in a state of financial unknowing. What's going to happen? What's my cash flow going to be? It has been a great opportunity for the programs that were receiving subsidy through the state subsidy program to be able to continue that. I think that was an amazing thing that the state of New Jersey did, was really looked at the centers and said they want to continue to support the centers as well as the parents. So none of the parents that were on the subsidy prior to the state of emergency, they were all able to continue on the program. Even if their year was up, the state automatically extended it. Typically, if they are unemployed, they start phasing out. The state allowed them just to keep going without even looking at the unemployment status at this point, so that if the children needed to be in care, they were in care. If they didn't need to, if the parents weren't working, they allowed them to still pay the centers. The centers were able to at least get that revenue coming in. So that was a wonderful thing. The centers that were open during this time, they were all in a state of confusion. The rules, the the rules were being made day by day. Every day was a new rule, a different perspective, because it wasn't a planned event. It just kind of happened. So once the state announced that all of the centers were closed and only these centers were open, every day there were questions, and the state had to make new policy. And so every day there were questions that were going back and forth. We were pretty much serving as the liaison between the centers and the state, and the centers did an amazing job making sure that the children were healthy, the children were safe. I haven't seen any official statistics at all about that time, but we didn't hear of any child getting COVID. And we did actually hear about one parent that had COVID, but no others. And one center closed for 2 weeks because a staff member had been exposed, but all of the other centers stayed open the rest of the time. So it was really a state of confusion, but as you said, the centers did an amazing job of just being able to be resourceful and just plug and move forward.
I mean, I think to your point about the state stepping up, I think they deserve credit for acknowledging the need to sustain childcare and doing some things, that we've advocated for a long time.
Including the rates. They
Right.
made the rates very lucrative.
Realistic.
Yes.
Right. So, some of that, of course, was due to the Federal CARES Act, but also the fact that the state set that policy. Again, for programs like yours that serve both fee-paying and subsidy families, it helped with the subsidy families, not necessarily the fee-paying. So the struggle will continue. Let's talk a bit about reopening, because you both alluded to the changed environment. What's different about childcare now as you look to reopen? Luz, I'm going to start with you.
Well, we opened on June 15. We just decided let's just see how it goes, kind of feel. I think one of the most difficult was fear, the fear of returning, the fear and the responsibility of trying to keep the children, the staff safe, the fear of parents and how to help them. One of the things that I know when we started is was kind of hard with children, social distancing, keeping masks on. That's not an easy process for 3 to 4 year olds. It's really interesting to see though how they adapt. I do have to say they adapt actually better than some of the older children, the younger ones. So I think we went in with a lot of apprehensiveness. And just today I checked with some of my staff. They feel a little better, but still it's fearful. And it's just they feel a huge responsibility too, to make sure the kids are safe and healthy. In some cases, I would say it's almost like being on pins and needles kind of feeling, because it is. I mean, childcare is a huge responsibility, but now even more. Every little sneeze, every little thing, teachers are going to this panic mode, and it's like, well, they've sneezed before, this is nothing new, let's just wait and see. And it's a whole new process for parents, have to adopt to coming in, waiting, having temperature taken, having all these questions asked. For those that are working, they have to rush to get to work, and now they have to wait even a little longer. So that's just some of the changes that we've had. Cleaning, we walk around with our spray bottles, just spraying every few times and wiping everything down. And even with the children, just trying to make them understand why now they can't share when we spend a year trying to teach them how to share. And so is just a reversal in some of child development issues as well.
So I have a couple of questions about staffing issues, and a question has come up about access to this cleaning supplies. But I did want to hear from Rose about, as you're planning to open up on August 1st, what's different?
For us, the difference is going to be not being able to, first of all, we've had to change our hours of operation because of the staffing requirements that we have to follow. There's no way we can financially afford to staff anymore our full hours, because before we used to consolidate the children who were early drop-off or late pickup. We're not allowed to do that anymore. The children are in small groups and they stay with one teacher, and that teacher, so we can't consolidate any groups or staffing. Covering our teachers' lunches is going to be pretty impossible because you're not allowed to go in. And for us, we rely heavily on volunteers. We have usually on average about 15 to 20 volunteers a week come through the school, both adult and from Princeton University. And we won't have those volunteers now. We're not allowed to have them. And of course, Princeton University, is doing their own thing, obviously, with their situation. So we're trying to work out how we're going to continue to provide that quality programming that we've always done without that kind of extra support service, considering our teachers are already busy. Now they've got to clean everything as they go. You've got to watch the children in small groups try to, as Lou said, explain to a 3-year-old why you can't share your truck anymore with your friend. And then in addition to all this, we are very much concerned and focused on the loss of learning the children have experienced, and then the social emotional impact on this closure, being out of school for so long, but also then the transition back to school. So our social worker has already been put a plan into place, doing all these kind of like re-entry transition meetings with the parents on Zoom before they come in, explaining what you're going to expect when you come to the school, how you're going to drop your child off, that you can't come into the building, etc., just to help that and ease that transition back in. But one of our big concerns our teachers are working on now, even though we haven't officially opened yet, already, about what kind of programming we can put into place immediately, along with our normal curriculum, to kind of accommodate that loss of learning that has occurred, and try to find that nice balance, as well as just making the children happy and safe, and that they can see each other's friends again, and not on a screen. They actually see each other in person and that. But I think the staffing is probably one of the biggest challenges it's going to be, because just we're not going to have our staff are already underpaid and overworked, and now they're going to be even more so. And but they love the children, and that's why they do it. And we're so glad to have them all back. And they're already looking forward and wanting to know who's going to be in their little pod that they're going to be responsible for. And then the teachers are actually reaching out to the children so that they know in advance who their teacher's going to be. We're sending a video of the teacher in the classroom so they know what the teacher looks like with the mask and the shield on and everything. And so not to be scared when they do come in the front door of the school.
I mean, I think if you're not involved day to day in childcare, you can't imagine what it's like. We had a provider who did a short video for us. She was running an emergency program about a day in the life of emergency childcare. Starting with the parent having to drop off the child at the door, not being able to come in. The teacher immediately washing the child's hand, the child wearing a mask, wiping down all the toys over and over and over. I think the change is profound, and it's interesting to hear you describe how you've adapted to that and tried to maintain the program, the elements of the program to make those connections for kids. So a question did come up about access both to cleaning supplies and PPE supplies. Has that been a challenge? I'm going to start with you, Nancy. Have you heard about anything about that?
Oh, we've heard a lot about it. A lot of programs have contacted us. Unfortunately, even though we're a resource referral agency, we don't have the resources to provide to them. But a lot of centers are having great difficulty finding the supplies, the wipes. They need so many supplies. I mean, I can't even imagine how many masks everybody needs, and those containers of wipes. I mean, how long does a container of wipes last? About 2 days probably, and in one classroom. So the need for PPE is tremendous, and the availability is not there. And as Rose said, everybody's paying the full price. Nobody's getting a bargain rate or anything like that for any of these PPEs. They're all of the products are going up in cost, just like they are for us personally. So it's a huge problem. I really don't know how the centers are going to continue to manage that if they don't start coming, the availability doesn't start coming back into the stores even, because they need that in order to continue their operations.
So Liz, you talked about being able to access donations of masks, as that's one example. How have you been handling the cleaning supply and PPE issue?
Well, donations, we've been asking for contributions and donation. There was a mini grant provided for the purchase of PPE also as well. But when I first did a budget, and this was with really no idea, but just to see what it would cost and figure out how many masks were going to be used per person, per day, per year. And it well exceeded over 20,000. And I think that's under even estimated, but I came up with this number and I was like in shock to see how much it is, because masks probably are changed more than once. They're not hopefully worn, depending. So it isn't expensive, but when we first had to purchase, and it's still an issue. In fact, today I still ran into the same thing. There's just not, you can't find them, or you have to wait months. I know that was when I first started trying to order stuff, and they were saying like 3 months waiting, or you have to wait. I know I reached out to Nancy right away and concerned, like, what am I going to do if we're supposed to open and we don't have anything? So right now, as I said, it's the unknown. We're good right now, but this is an expense that's going to be there, an added expense, and who knows how much we're really going to need.
So Rose, you talked about opening in August. How have you been planning that?
I've been stockpiling just a little bit, but it's interesting as I start to unpack all the boxes and put things in the classrooms and that, I look at what supply I have and I go, I'm going to be lucky to finish September, and then I'm going to need to get more. And that's when all the schools are going to be opening and everyone's competing for this. So it's one of those things where literally, if I'm even doing my personal grocery shopping and I see wipes on the actual shelf in the supermarket, I pick it up for the school, not for myself. But one of the added costs, and as Liz mentioned, we were lucky enough that there was a mini grant available to providers to kind of help offset the costs of some of the cleaning. But obviously mini being the important word there, because the cost is so expensive. Additionally, it's our cleaning costs of actually our cleaning company. We're going, obviously, because the safety of our children and our staff is paramount. We've got a great cleaning company. They're doing extra cleaning. They'll do a deep clean every week in addition to the nightly clean that they do. We're having the environment vaporizer thing happening every week once we reopen. And they're all costs that are not in our original budget. Right. And our accountant, our volunteer accountant, and I have been trying to work up a 3-month budget, because there's no way we can do a 12 months. We don't know what 12 months is going to look like right now. And our cleaning budget line item has just gone through the roof, but we have to do it. It's the safety of our children. So we're just going to have to find the money. That's one, and I think that helps as we talk to our parents in getting them ready to come back. Their biggest question is, how's my child going to transition? And secondly, what are you doing regarding cleaning? And they're getting a bit of peace of mind when we explain to them all the steps that we're taking during the day as well as after hours. And I think so we need to do it. It's just finding the money to do it. So that's where we're at right now.
And I mean, I think you make a very important point. One thing we've heard, one provider said to us, I looked at my cleaning budget for the year and I'll go through that in the first 3 months.
Yes,
Right.
easily.
At least.
So expensive. And with the not restriction, but the necessity for cleaning, what that involves, someone said to us, I really should have a cleaning staff. It's not something that we can incorporate into the class as we did in the past. We have a couple of questions. I'm going to ask you one, Nancy. Someone posted a question about, and this is a data that we've heard before as well, that according to a national survey, approximately 40% of childcare programs might close. One, is that what we're seeing in New Jersey? And two, what would be the impact if that happened?
As Rose was talking, I wrote myself a little note when she said, we have to find the money, we just have to do it. The reality is, right now, we're not hearing of programs closing. There are some programs that didn't open at all, like summer camp programs, CYO here in Mercer County, that serves hundreds of children. They didn't even open, they're not even opening this summer. But a lot of programs are taking that perspective right now that we've got to do this, we're going to do it. But centers have been living on a shoestring budget for so long. I agree that we're going to see closures as it's coming down, because the expenses, not just the PPE expenses, cleaning expenses, the staffing costs, and you can't charge parents more money. The parents don't have more money. In fact, a lot of the parents aren't even going to be around, especially the private pay if they're unemployed. And it's going to have a ripple effect, a major ripple effect, I believe, on the number of centers that are going to be able to make it through this. Because even though the centers right now are saying, well, we just have to do it, you might say that, but when you don't have the money or the resources to just do it anymore, you can't do it. Right. And that is a major concern. And I can't predict how many programs will make it through and will not, but a lot of programs also are not the not-for-profit centers, but they're little mom and pop privately owned programs, and those programs don't have access even the generous grants like the Princeton Area Community Foundation had the grant available, and there were other grants, small grants that are available throughout the community, but those were only for nonprofit centers. And so this will have a major impact on all childcare businesses, and we don't know what's going to happen for the future.
A couple of questions came up about contingency plans if there's a resurgence of the virus. Is that something you're thinking about or planning for?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that when my board and I decided that we would reopen August 1st after researching it extensively as to what would be best for us as a school and for our families, we surveyed our families, etc. The second thing we did, besides after we said August 1st, was, well, now we create a plan for what happens if we have to close again. And what does that look like, both financially for the school, but also obviously for our families and our teachers. And, that is something that we can prepare and plan as much as we can, but until it actually happens, and hopefully it doesn't, we won't know if we're ready or not. It's very good to hear, and I continue to hear it, that very few centers have had to close due to cases that remained open during the pandemic. So, fingers crossed, if we, follow the guidelines and the restrictions, we'll be okay. But there's so many unknowns out there right now, and so it is very, very scary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know a couple of questions on the cleaning again. Can you give us a range of the cost of cleaning? Mention that the cleaning costs are through the roof. What does that mean? Help us understand the dollar amounts. Luz, you talked about a $20,000 cost that you estimate. And also, is there any opportunity for programs to work together, either to purchase supplies together or to share some of those services? I don't know if that's something that you have looked at.
I think if we were able to purchase in bulk, if we had that opportunity, I'm not quite sure how it would work out. Even before this, It seemed like a way for child care centers to cut costs, to purchase in bulk, maybe as a large entity as opposed as, individually. But the problems is that the availability, to go and find what we need. And even when you try bulk, you have to wait for the company to respond and see if they can meet. And, bulk is not like maybe the school district, but for us, and even with that, I'm still waiting to hear about a couple of products to see if we can get 20 as opposed to one. And I do try to cheat and go one and then order another one in order, but eventually they realize it's going to the same address. Yeah, it's all very interesting and being creative. And we're just talking of the PPE supplies. And I think that if a second round of this is to come, that's even going to be even more difficult to be able to do it. And as I said, that's a big part of that puzzle. If we're not able to obtain what we need, we can't open up safely.
Right. And listening to you, it certainly reinforces why childcare is such a unique business. You are individual programs. You don't have the scope to do things, even when we talk about, as you just pointed out, Luz, talking about buying in bulk. Bulk to you is 20, right? And I think it does highlight, I think, the struggles of childcare, and also, as we said when we started out, how resourceful you've all been in trying to provide the service. I had a couple of questions. I want to get back to the issue of learning loss, because I think as the conversation has gone on about virtual learning, it tends to focus on older children. But we all know that childcare is where our youngest children have their first learning experience outside the family. Childcare is education for children from birth to age 3 or up until they enter preschool or kindergarten. Rose, you talked a little bit about what you're seeing. Can you talk a little more about what you're seeing as you reach out to your families as children come back?
Absolutely. I mean, the reason we were doing our weekly Zoom meetings, we did them 3 times a week since we closed, was an opportunity for us to see the children and to engage them. And so not only for them to feel like that we're still here for them, but also we were able to see if they were looking healthy and everything like that. But we also, as we read stories and sang songs and did physical movement with them, we were asking them, to do show and tell, to, engage them in a conversation so they're using their language, especially for our bilingual families when we're teaching them English. So, our teachers who were doing this, by the way, they had been laid off, but they continued to do this because they loved the children, which was awesome. And, they were making sure the children were practicing their English. Some of the older children would share a book, and we asked them, well, can you read to us a part of it? And, so just to try to continue to engage them so that they didn't have a complete loss. And, one of the things we were using an online app as well, where we would be putting videos that we made and messages and photographs. And we were asking the families, as the children, did an activity that we sent in the mail to them, for them to take a photograph of it and share it back to us. And, many of them were art-based, but the idea was it was, something about the story we just did on our Zoom meeting. So we were able to try to do some kind of activity with the children, but obviously it's very difficult. We're talking 3-year-olds on a Zoom meeting. It was very interesting. We had Trenton Circus Squad at one stage do one for us, which was awesome. Getting the children to do that as, to try to practice to juggle as well was hilarious. But the teachers right now are very concerned about like language literacy, obviously, but also mathematics. Like, have they forgotten their numbers, their colors, the basics that the children are already, normally would be all ready to go. And, for some of our children returning in August, some of them are coming back to us for just 1 month before they go off to kindergarten. And they're the parents who are really concerned, is my child going to be ready for kindergarten? And that's, there's only so many times we can say, they'll be okay. The parents are rightfully concerned. So one of the things, as we were sending home packets of information and activities, when possible, I would put like paperback books in the envelopes as well, so that they had more books to read at home as a family. So just trying to encourage that literacy at the home. And as a part of our plan, that if we had to close again, they're the kind of things that we would do again, because we were always getting feedback from our families, what they were liking, what was working, what was not really working. So we were adjusting every week. Show and tell was a huge thing for us to do with the children, because it allowed us again to have a conversation with the children and get them used to their verbal skills, so that they weren't socially withdrawing from each other, etc. So, and now when they come back, one of the first things our teachers will be doing, they've been already in contact obviously with all the parents and talking to gathering the information about what the parents are concerned about. But as soon as the children come back in, our teachers will be doing a kind of informal assessment themselves about, like, where's the child at? Do they still remember their colors, their numbers, their letters? Can, you know, those who were starting to read, are they still able to read? Those who are bilingual, have they lost their English altogether, etc. So, and then we'll craft our curriculum based on that. So it's going to be double work for the teachers, but, you know, that's what we have to do.
So Lou, you reopened. What are you seeing in terms of children coming back?
Some of the same things and concerns that teachers have shared, but I want to add that one of the things that we kind of jumped into gear and all had to learn, and an amazing staff, and I have to give them so much credit, was that they found apps like Class Dojo and Messengers, and started giving, for those parents that had internet access and so forth, were able to use those apps to stay in communication. But I want to add one little short story, is that the smallest thing that perhaps sometimes we don't think about. So the teachers were sort of giving out little activities, and one of the parents reached out and said that she didn't have supplies, no crayons, no paper at home. So I thought it was just amazing how the staff came in prepackaged paper, crayons, little scissors, and put them out in the lawn, particularly when this first happened, so that there was that social distancing. And to me, it just melts my heart when there's pictures of parents driving, or I should say, using their bicycles to come to the center and to pick up the little package. But it was even something that when we're doing this back and forth, we didn't stop to think, oh my goodness, maybe they don't have crayons or construction papers or child safety scissors or, that kind of thing. And so it's just something that might seem simple, but it really meant a lot to the parents to get those prepackaged supplies so they can do the activities that the teachers were sharing.
We did the
great story.
Yeah, we did the same, Luz, and I only just recently realized that we, sent home all these supplies for our families and now we have very limited supplies at the school,
Yeah.
so we had to go buy them quickly.
Right. Yeah.
So I know we're coming to the end, and we had some great questions. I just want to ask one question of Nancy, and then we'll turn it back. But a question came up about if the supply of high quality childcare is decreased, if programs can't come back, or if the standards which actually limit the number of children who could be served continue, what's the impact going to be on the most vulnerable children?
Well, I think all of the comments that were made already, really show that there's been a loss. But in New Jersey, there's been so much movement towards improving the quality of childcare over the last 10 years. I mean, the state has really focused on, making sure that programs are up to speed. They have provided a lot of resources for the programs. And if going back 10 years prior when that was not a focus, the quality of childcare was really pretty dismal. And I would hate to see New Jersey stepping back to those days. And also the availability of childcare programs. Just having a childcare program, like Lou said, families are riding their bicycle to the center. When it's close, it's in the neighborhood, it's high quality. That's really what every family is looking for childcare. And so for the most vulnerable children, when they don't have something in a safe environment to go to, it's not convenient for the parents who don't have cars, then the children are not going to take advantage of the program, and they're going to be at home with a game in front of them or a television in front of them, not having the opportunity to have relationship building and learning. And I think it will have a severe impact if that is the case. We'll have to wait and see what really happens after all of this, but I'm just hoping that our country and our state can really focus on making sure that the programs continue to stay whole and that the programs continue to be able to exist, because that they put the resources there to help support those childcare centers.
Nancy, that's a great way to end this discussion, a great statement. And just to take that one step further, this is an opportunity for advocacy. We have attention, I think, of the public, of state and national leaders in a way that we have not had. It's time to reinforce how important childcare is, and to your point, not slip back. Our state has invested a lot in quality, and we see that. We have to sustain that as well. I know a few more questions came up, and I'm going to turn it over to Karen to close us out, and perhaps offer the opportunity to continue for questions. Karen?
Hello, thank you so much, Seal, and thanks to our panelists, Luz, Nancy, and Rose, for providing us with a really honest and enlightening assessment of the realities of childcare during COVID. They've agreed to stick around if you have any additional questions. But first, I want to say a few words, share a few thoughts with you. The Fund for Women and Girls is deeply committed to supporting nonprofits such as Better Beginnings and Princeton Nursery School. Just listening to their stories tonight, I was just deeply touched and really fired up to be an advocate. But we need your help to do this. When you contribute to the fund, you join a dynamic group of women and a few good men who believe that we can do more together than we can do individually to meet the needs of vulnerable women and children. This year, the fund's addressing these needs through a streamlined grant-making process, which we'll be launching very shortly. Partnering with other funders and guiding by our voting members, we'll utilize an abridged application form and condensed decision-making with online voting to quickly and efficiently award significant grants to nonprofit organizations. But we can only help the kind of organizations you heard from tonight if you make a generous financial contribution. You can use Give Lively tonight and text NJ Women to 44321, or go to Donate. There's a button on the website of the Princeton Area Community Foundation, the Fund for Women and Girls webpage. You can find both links in the chat box. We really hope you've enjoyed this first virtual Cocktails and Conversation. It's an experiment that I think went really well. I want to give a special thanks to Jen Morak and our Communications and Membership Committee for doing a fantastic job in organizing this evening's event. I want to thank Mike Nuno of the Community Foundation for his support. We hope you will join us for our next virtual Cocktails and Conversation. So be on the lookout for an email invitation during the coming weeks. Thank you once again for your support of the Fund for Women and Girls. If you have to leave us, I say good night, thank you, and be safe. But if you can stay a few more minutes, we can have our panelists and moderator answer some more questions. So Seal, take it away.
So a number of interesting questions came up toward the end. One picked up on the conversation we ended about the social and emotional challenges and difficulties that you expect with very young children? Is there advice for parents? What can parents do? Are there success stories of parents who have, or your work with parents to address that?
I would say that what we have learned and continue to learn, even though it's difficult, is that if we can be as positive as it is possible with the children as well, and not transmit the fears that we have, that's helpful with the children, with their social emotion. And we speak about that with our staff to make sure that the children, that we try to maintain normalcy as much as possible, even when they're wearing masks or social distancing. We try to, but we don't ponder on that either. You know, they'll take it off, you put it on, but we just try to make it as normal as possible throughout the day, so that, again, that fear that we all have and are feeling as adults, that we can try to make it not as fearful for children. They hear too much, they see too much, and it's a different norm for them.
And I would add to that one of the things we've done throughout the time we've been closed is my program administrator, social worker, and I have been talking to our families and reassuring the parents that the emotions and the experiences they're having are okay. It's normal to be feeling this way. And for a few of them who are really struggling with different things that were going on in their family who was impacted by COVID, etc., we made sure we put them in touch with people who could help them. Honestly, for many of our families, it was like they didn't know where to turn, and didn't even know, because our families aren't just from Princeton, we geographically looked at every food pantry in towns or townships where our families are living, and we shared that information with those families so that they know that there was resources available to them. Every time we got an alert about one of the emergency farm stands that was happening in Ewing, for example, we sent that out to all our families. And that, so it's just making sure that the parents knew there were people and resources available to them and will continue to be available to them, hopefully as long as possible. And I think, you know, for a couple of our parents who I know took up the opportunity to speak to somebody professionally about the stress they were under with having all their children at home, and that they've lost their jobs and not sure how they're going to pay their bills, especially, you know, being evicted, etc. I know that those families have appreciated that there was that kind of support available to them. And I think, you know, that's something that's very critical that we need to make sure that continues, because this isn't just going to finish. It's going to continue for quite a while, the impact of what is happening on these families.
I think there was one. Go ahead, Nancy.
I'd just like to jump in and say how important it is also for the parents to make sure that they let the centers know how important communication is for them right now. Because the parents really need to feel that, you know, their loved one is being well taken care of and everything is happening. And sometimes the centers get so busy that parent communication gets lost in, in the space of time. And for a center, it's so important to really make sure that they are communicating every single day with the parents. They're not allowed in the center. The parents aren't able to see what's going on. And the parents really need to know that to calm some of their fears. And so, you know, I just think it's really important for the parents to know that they need to express that to their centers, that they need to be able to have good communication going on a day-to-day basis, that, that's one of their major needs. And I think pretty much all parents have that need, especially right now.
Right. Good point, Nancy. Thank you for adding that. There were a couple of other questions. One came up about the use of volunteers since summer programs are closed, but I think as we talked about earlier on, the new standards prohibit that, prohibit people coming in to the programs, including volunteers, people who come in to do activities. It is a one-on-one where the teacher stays with the group for the day. Last question in the Q&A box, I think is a great place to close. What can we do? What is the most important thing that we can do? I'm assuming as an individual or as the fund, what would help? What one thing would you like to see?
You know, so many of the people and organizations like the Fund for Women and Girls have been so supportive of nonprofits in the childcare industry, and to continue to support them in the ways that they've supported them in the past, whether it's through Fund for Women and Girls, whether it's through individual donations, etc. I know that many of the women I see here tonight as attendees, I know they're donors of our school. They've given to us directly as well as through the Fund for Women and Girls. And I think, you know, we need that more so than ever. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that, you know, like I don't want to speak for Luz, but I can guarantee you every dollar you give to us goes directly to supporting and taking care of these children. And you know that your gift is having an immediate impact on these families who so desperately need it, as they are the vulnerable families in our community right now.
I'd like to add that there was this, as I said, I've been at Better Beginnings for over 40 years now. Started as a parent needing childcare center, and am here today because I had affordable childcare. But I remember one day was this thing that for every, I think it was from high school, for every $1 donated, there's a $7 return. And most recently, I saw that with inflation now is for every $1 donated, there's a $16 return kind of thing. So yes, that is very important. But I also will add that advocacy is so important. And then especially at a time like this, we need to just get out there the importance of quality childcare, what it means to society. It's not just care. I think we've worked very hard to get away from that stereotype that we're babysitters and then just childcare, and now that we're early educators, and so the advocacy needs to continue and it needs to be strong. And I quickly just want to take this opportunity, along with what Rose said, we are so thankful to so many in our community and so many who have donated to the Girls and Women's Work. We are incredibly fortunate that the support is there. And I know we couldn't have not done it without that support. And for daycares and childcare centers soon to be open, they need that support too. And even if it's emotional support, we need that. We need to know that teachers, childcare providers are appreciated, that they're doing an important job, that really we can do this together and get over this. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy, last word.
Well, I think going along with what Lou said regarding advocacy, when people are at the real cocktail parties talking about childcare and the importance of childcare and the importance of high quality programming, good reimbursement rates that the state and the federal government put forward for low-income working families, how critical that reimbursement rate is to the survival of the childcare centers that serve them, and just general advocacy, letting everyone know that the early years are more important even than the elementary school years. So that's my closing word. Advocacy.
Great. That's a great place to stop. I think we've covered most of the questions that came up in the Q&A. I just want to extend my thanks to the three of you. I don't think that you certainly portray a picture of the critical importance of childcare, how you stepped up during the crisis, and what it looks like going forward, which I think, in keeping with your point about advocacy, Nancy, that is what's needed in advocacy. People need to really understand. And this is a moment I think we can capture that attention. So let me thank the three of you for participating in this panel, and to again thank the Fund for Women and Girls for hosting this event. And I think I'm going to close out at that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Seal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.